we've all been there. You think you're going to be fine driving through a snowstorm, and then all of a sudden you're kind of stuck in the middle of it. What at that point should you do? Should you keep going? Should you stop and pull over? What's the safest thing to do?
That's a really great question. In general, I recommend not pulling over unless there's somewhere to pull over to, like a gas station or a house or a church or a parking lot. Otherwise, if you're just pulling over on the side of the road, you could be potentially exacerbating the situation, not only by getting stuck on the side of the road for sure, but also potentially being run into by another vehicle because of poor visibility. So I would say keep on going unless you absolutely have to pull off.
So let's say you slide off, you're stuck. What next?
If you slide off the road, one of the first things you want to do is put on your flashers, your hazard lights, because you'd be surprised at how often someone gets rear-ended because of low visibility conditions. In snowstorms or even rainstorms, a lot of times vehicles are actually following the solid tail lights of the car in front of them rather than the road. And the last thing you want is someone rear-ending you if you've slid off the road. Number two, you want to make a phone call for help right away and gauge what you're in for over the course of the next few hours or maybe even day. You want to get an idea of when help can arrive so that you can begin making a plan.
And then should that plan include staying in your car, and should it include walking and getting out of your car?
Yeah, if you're stranded in your car, I recommend staying in your car unless there is a clear destination in sight or you know exactly where you're going. You would never want to leave your vehicle in hopes that maybe around the bend there's going to be somewhere that you can take refuge. You want to only leave your vehicle if you can see a destination in sight, because otherwise you could be leaving the known shelter, which really isn't that dangerous if you're inside of your vehicle, for an unknown, completely exposed to the elements condition. And that is actually really dangerous.
You're a survival guide. You know what to have in your car to survive for long periods of time, I assume. So take me through what you've got there, what the best things to have in your car if you live in these areas that do get heavy snow.
So when it comes to being stuck in the snow, you're really concerned mainly about short-term survival. You're probably not going to be living off the land. Okay. So there are three things that are at the top of the list. Number one is outdoor clothing to protect you from the elements. Most people do not have outdoor clothing in their vehicle during wintertime conditions, and it's a huge mistake. You want to have things in your car that you would wear if you were going skiing or hiking in the snow, like gloves and hat. You want to have multiple layers, including a waterproof exterior shell or a poncho. Because if you're out in the snow or out in cold weather and you get wet, you've taken a really bad situation and made it a whole lot worse. Number two is you need to have a cell phone car charger in your vehicle. Your cell phone these days are your link to rescue, and you've got to keep that phone charged. And number three, you want to make sure to have gas in your car. That's easy to overlook, but in wintertime conditions, you never want to let your tank run under half a tank full. That way, if you're stranded in the snow, you've got at least a half a tank of gas. And if you ration that, that can last for a very long time.
How do you ration that?
Well, you would intermittently turn your vehicle on and off just enough to stay comfortable inside. And if you do that over the course of a night or even a full day, the gas will last a really, really long time. It's different for every vehicle, but you definitely don't want to leave your car running continuously. You want to turn it on, heat the vehicle up, and then continue that cycle until you can't do it anymore.
All right, let's say you're not prepared. You're stuck out on the road. You have some random stuff in your car, but you don't have the necessities. What can you modify with what might already be in your car if you are very cold or need to have these resources that just aren't there?
Yeah. So improvising is never as good as being prepared in advance. But one thing you could potentially do that could make a huge difference is almost all the heat loss from your vehicle happens through the windows, whether it's the front window or the side windows. So anything you can do to cover up those windows, whether you use some duct tape and tape a Mylar blanket over the window, or you could use extra clothing or even like a tote bag or something like that. Anytime you can cover up those windows, it makes a huge difference in keeping the heat that you do have inside of the vehicle. In a worst case scenario, almost all vehicles underneath the carpet, especially in the trunk area, are lined with a 1/2 inch of foam insulation that's used as a sound barrier. And in a desperate situation, you could strip away that carpet, strip away that foam insulation, and use that to keep warm if you absolutely had to.
Wow, interesting. Good to know. Is there anything else that we aren't thinking of that you have seen happen? Any kind of unknowns that we should be prepared for?
Yeah, so one thing that hardly anyone is aware of is that if your car is stuck in deep snow, you want to immediately clear away the snow that's around the exhaust pipe. Because what can happen is that snow can create a block all the way around the vehicle, including the exhaust. That exhaust then can then be trapped underneath the vehicle for potentially hours of staying warm inside. And what that does is that creates a situation where carbon monoxide could potentially leak into the vehicle, and we all know how dangerous that can be. So you want to dig away the snow from the sides, from around the exhaust, to make sure there's airflow underneath that vehicle. It's super important.